Hi there, my name is Ron Rogers, and this presentation is titled How to Make a Lot of Money in Real Estate Rentals and How to Lose Your Shirt If You're Not Careful, and the Things That Can Bite You in the Posterior. Now, you want to know how to make a lot of money in real estate very easily? Well, that's very simple. You produce a course that tells people how easy it is to make money in real estate. I think those people make the most money by selling the courses. And I dealt with a lot of those people when I later became a real estate broker. But they teach you a lot of stuff that really doesn't work in real life. Now, how did I get into being a real estate investor? I've done it for just about 20 years. And overall, it's been well. But I was an airline pilot. I retired recently. I had one of these cushy airline jobs, and everything was going fine until 9/11. And shortly after that, my airline declared bankruptcy. And the lawyers actually on a Frontline special were laughing about how they had stolen our pensions. And I was flying at the time, and people would get on my airline and they would apologize for what the attorneys did to us and our pensions. And I didn't know what they were talking about until I went back and saw it. But yeah, so the pension's gone. So, I need to do something. Well, I looked at a number of things, franchises even, and finally my wife says, your dad did okay with rentals. He had 2 rentals, and he did okay. He had some good renters, bad renters, but he did okay. And he says, my wife said, you can fix just about anything, and that's an important thing, is having the ability to do a lot of the work yourself will save you a lot of money. And I'll tell you some tales where remote property ran into problems with that, but that's later on. But, okay, she says you can fix stuff, and I could. That was very helpful, and he had 2 properties that worked well, so I thought, okay, I'll give it a try. So I contacted a realtor, and I said, well, here's what I want to do. Let's go look at a few houses. So here's the first one I bought. And I always got a house bit of a deal. I didn't buy it unless I could get a bit of a deal because, I'm not moving. I don't have any time constraints. I'll buy it when it's right to buy it. So that gives you a lot of leverage. And you could make a lot of money when you had a situation where people hated each other, like they're going through a divorce, because they didn't care so much. They just wanted to get out of the house. And I got some interesting stories about the renters that were in this house at the time I bought it. But I delve into each one of these houses in other presentations because each one of them has a story and a lesson that's unique. And I think you can learn a lot of valuable information from it. But this is my first one, and all in all, it went pretty good. And I've got a long-term renter in there, and that's working out well. All right, here's the second house I bought. Well, this went well. I bought this house in 2004, and I have 1 renter in there. I've had a continual renter. It's now 2024. I've had a continual renter in there for 20 years. And he's been a good renter. He actually takes care of a lot of things himself. And if I would have stopped at 2 rentals, I'd have gone, hey, this is great. I'm having a fun time. This is easy as can be, making money. And the houses are appreciating. And, as my dad said, he felt bad for the renters because at the end of, 20 years, you own the house and all they have is receipts, which is why it's, used to be not good to be a renter, but with economic conditions nowadays, sometimes people just don't have a choice. I mean, the rental prices have gotten outlandish, and with long-term renters, I've kept mine reasonable because I haven't ended up kind of screwing them over, but having good long-term renters is worth giving them a slight discount on their property. Okay, well, this was going on. I bought 2 houses, and I thought, well, I take tests well. I thought I'd get my own real estate license, and that way I could save on the commissions. But you still have to split half of it with the managing broker. So I started out in Century 21, and I got my license there. The agency that I was dealing with before on buying the last house, the owner said, well, you can be successful being a real estate agent, but you can't be successful part-time. And of course, I still had my airline job, so I was a part-time real estate guy. And he says, no, you can't be successful in that. Well, after I had proved that I could be successful, he actually later offered me a job. I went from Century 21. I got a nice incentive to come over to the GMAC. I went to them, and then finally I decided, like I said, I could take tests easily. I got my salesperson, broker, managing broker license. So with managing broker, you can set up your own place, which is what I eventually did. I went to Remax for a while because you're really in control of everything then. Did a little bit of commercial real estate. But basically, things were getting too busy, and I decided just to back out and just keep my license for myself to do my own properties. But eventually, I let it go just because keeping it up was a lot of difficulty in keeping up the license. And I got some realtors that I knew that I'd worked with before that now handle my properties. And, the commissions are high, and there's some lawsuits around, but they bring a lot of value added to it, so I don't mind paying the commission. Now, let's talk about my third property. This is my third property, and I think this property was cursed from the beginning. I actually had one renter said that, "Did you know the place is haunted?" And her husband kind of looked at me, like, "Yeah, right." But yeah, that was the worst tale I heard. But I had some really bad renters in here. In fact, the last ones I had to evict. And I've only had to evict 3 people, 2 in Florida. Florida is a nice state for eviction. You can do it real fast. Illinois, yeah, not so good. The courts really favor the renters, and yeah, it's very difficult to evict somebody up here. And I got a tale of this house about my eviction of this lady that you won't believe. Anyway, but that's in another presentation. And then here's one I bought, a duplex. Actually, duplexes are pretty good because for cost outlay, you make a good deal of money on a duplex. But this was a house that was built in 1910. Okay, we're talking about 110 years old. There's a lot of very interesting aspects about owning a house that old, and I'll talk about that in just a minute. But one thing that's interesting is 2x4s are actually 2 inches by 4 inches. Yeah. All right, this house. Boy, I got a really good deal on this house, and it ended up not being such a good deal. This house had a Hindu family in it, and there is a Sanskrit symbol that they like to put around the doors, which looks a lot like a swastika because that's where the Nazis got it from. The Hindu symbol for peace, and if you go to a Hindu cemetery, you'll see a lot of these on the gravestones, and you wonder, my gosh, what did I run into, a Nazi cemetery here? But anyway, people would come to see this house, and the real estate agent was a Vietnamese individual, and he didn't stress to these people that they should take the Sanskrit, which appeared to be swastikas, off the front porch, because people, he told me, would open the door and say, "I'm not buying a house from a bunch of Nazis," and turn around and leave before he could even explain it. And the other part was once they opened the door, they were hit with the odor of curry, and it about knocked them over. He said people opened the door, took one whiff, turned around, and got out of there. But that was a good selling point, how I got a good price reduction because, well, was it? I started looking into, well, how do you get curry smell out of a house? And they said, you don't, burn it down. And it was extremely difficult to get that out, and almost killed me, actually. I'll tell that story. Now, here's another aspect of owning property long distance, and I learned about double closings, and that's how a guy that I thought I could trust, right? I didn't know him that well. My youngest son convinced me to help a friend of his do flips down there in real estate, and this was back in early 2000 when things were going very well before the market crashed, and you could make money very easily, and well, this was I got really royally screwed on this, and I'll explain that when I talk about this house. And owning property in Florida with hurricanes and insurance has gone through the roof. I'm glad I got out of these. It also, I found out, was not in a good part of town. You see that cage over the air conditioner? That's not for aesthetics. That's because people would steal air conditioners, and the previous air conditioner was stolen. I rented to a lady who, she checked out all right, but she had her son who had a number of felonies in there move in with her, and this air conditioner, the previous one, disappeared. And she claimed that somebody came up with their pickup truck and put a rope around it and pulled it. Well, I could believe that if the pipes hadn't been cut on the inside next to the furnace. This is another house we owned in a condo, and this is another example of real estate management long distance that can absolutely screw you over. This was good property. My son lived there while he was going to school in Florida, and it pretty much, I had good renters in here basically, but it was the maintenance fees and stuff that were killing me. This was down in Altamont Springs. Now, this house, my son was in this while he was going to Duke University. This is in the Raleigh-Durham area, and it's a townhome, and had a good rental experience with this. This is, though, part of the timing issue. I sold this house, and then it has since tripled in value. Yeah, I'll tell you that story. Now, this is my venture into rehab properties, and this is my one and only complete rehab. And by complete, I mean the place had been gutted. And there's an interesting story here about there had been a dryer fire and smoke had gone all through the house, and they gutted it. And the guy who owned it didn't live in the city. And the renter said, well, I'll tell you what, I'll rehab the thing for you, and just sign over the insurance check to me, which was, the insurance check was about $110,000 if I remember. Just sign that check over to me, and I'll take care of it. Well, funny thing happened. A couple months later, the owner couldn't get a hold of the renter doing all this work. And finally, he comes up there to look at the house, and he sees this. The renter was supposed to redo it. Well, the check was gone, the renter disappeared, and the house looked like this, and the owner just went, oh my gosh. The nice thing about this is you could stand in the living room and you could look all the way through the house because there was no drywall anywhere. Yeah, I'll talk about this in that presentation, because this was one heck of a learning lesson for me on how to do a rehab and not do a rehab. And this is the house that I mentioned was cursed. I finally was able to sell it. And one thing interesting about a house like this, you got to consider that when you rent it, and it's got a yard, while you're waiting to rent it, you're the one who has to mow that. It was a fairly nice house. I have done a fairly significant rehab on this house 3 times. I am intimately familiar with every working on this house. But this was my most unlucky house with renter. You know, you're supposed to, when you leave a rental property, you're supposed to leave it the way you found it, you know, clean, minus wear and tear, not a bunch of stuff on the parking way here that I end up having to remove. Of course, that's good if it's all out here. I've had ones where the house was just a mess on the inside, and I'll talk about that when I talk about this house. And how do you damage every single door? I had to replace every single interior door on this house after the last people got out of there. And they had good rental references. They had been in the previous house for 8 years, and they had decent credit. Every door was damaged. They locked their dog, I guess, in the bathroom, and it tried to get out. And kids, you know, they wrote with magic marker on everything. Now, one thing to know about rental houses is you can have expenses, like when you have to replace the siding and roof. But actually, I had the siding and roofs replaced on 4 of my houses, and it cost me very, very little. And I'll tell you that trick here. But you also have expenses you can't get around, like if you have a sewer line problem, and this was a $3,000 repair. And this is the duplex. It had a new roof and siding, but there's a lot of work to do on a 110-year-old house. A lot of stuff is dated. This was replacing flooring and cabinets, redid the kitchen. Now, I also thought about starting a physical education program called Rehab Aerobics, because you can really get into shape by rehabbing a house. And there on the left, I'm pulling out the plaster lath. You got all the plaster, you got all the little slats they put up there. You can see it on the other side of the wall there, and replacing it with drywall. That's a lot of work. On the right, I'm removing a steel bathtub. Now, most bathtubs are cast iron. This one was steel, so I had to take it with my Sawzall, cut it apart, and take it out in pieces. Now, I also thought about an anger management course. That you get one of these cast iron bathtubs, and these things are heavy as can be. It takes two people to get them out. And I looked up how do you get rid of them. They said, well, sledgehammer. After about the third or fourth hit, the thing breaks up. And I go, really? I'd not heard of that. So I started whacking at this with the sledgehammer, and then it just started to fracture. And you talk about an anger management course. You go taking a sledgehammer to a bathtub. That'll get out a lot of anger. Of course, this is an old house, and it's a lot of work. And all the bathrooms I had to replace because they were dated. And there's more junk from people who just left you all their good old oldies when they left the house. Yep, there's some more. Now, one aspect I'll tell you about these two places I had down in Daytona Beach. Both of them had fires in them. And this fire, the guy, as they were putting him in the police car, he says, I told the, starts with B, rhymes with which, that I was going to burn her defecation, but that wasn't the word he used. So I got the police report, and I, of course, fax it to the insurance guy, and he goes, yeah, I guess nobody's going to argue arson with that. So, yeah, he burnt the interior of the house. This house, I had some people in there selling drugs, and we figured that out after we found all the mini cameras around. But the last person I had in the house, that was kind of interesting. The mother rented it, but this is one of the deals you got to watch out for, and one of the lessons learned. And it's covered in the lease, but I was renting to the mother who had very good credit in that, but she ended up putting her son in there. She virtually never stayed at the house. It was her son, and he was, let's say, a little mentally challenged, and it went all right. She paid the rent, stuff like that. But he left a pan full of grease on the stove and went into the living room. And, of course, the grease caught on fire, burned up the kitchen. And, yeah, that was an extensive rehab. That was the end of that, and I sold that house. I've sold all my properties out of state because they were just such a pain, although I gave up some increase in value. I'll talk about each one of those. But anyway, that's my real estate story, and I hope you got some good information out of it. And I've got a lot of more stuff to tell you with individual lessons on each house, and they're all sort of different lessons you can learn about owning real estate property. Anyway, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it.